Hi and welcome. It's Phil here again. It's Tuesday, it's the 5th week of lockdown in a row, and today we're going to look at some really important stuff that will transform your health. We're going to work with questions you're going to drop to me through the comment section, please do. But particularly I'm going to be focusing on how we deal with other people. Because there is, again, strong evidence that the quality of our relationships will affect our health. And at the moment, whilst we're stuck in lockdown, and there are people we're bumping into all the time, people we probably know quite well, we have to find ways to deal with them. So we're going to look at a number of techniques that will allow you to transform those relationships, no matter how good, how stale, how you keep on just going through the same cycles. So be really interested to have your comments, questions. You guys provide a lot of the input to these sessions over the last few weeks. Great to continue that, because it's really useful for me to hear what you need, so I can focus it on you guys rather than just me and my lovely waterfall behind me. Obviously, I'm not really sitting in a tropical pool, although I kind of wish I was sometimes. So do drop some comments in. I can't see any comments coming up, but hopefully they will work. So just put some in, just tell me that it is working, and that'll be handy. We're going to begin by looking at some of the cool things you need to know about relationships. And the first thing you need to know about relationships is, any guesses? That although most things, I'm quite well known for thinking that everything in the world is quite easy, one of the things that is quite challenging are relationships, because we have the complexity of one human trying to deal with the complexity of another human. And that's where trouble begins, because we all come from our own version of reality, what we think we see, what we think is right and wrong. If you listen to other podcasts and seminars I've been doing, you'll notice a couple of things that humans really don't like. Number one is they don't like somebody suggesting that they are wrong. And humans quite enjoy trying to make other people wrong. Quite often we need to change that. It's one of the things we're going to be looking at today. How do you avoid making people wrong? Because when you start making someone wrong, they don't like it, and what they will do is they will come back at you fighting, and then you'll be stuck in conflict. And conflict isn't much fun most of the time, but it's particularly not very useful when you're stuck in a house and you can't get out, because as we've said on other of these seminars, one of the mechanisms we often have dealing with tricky stuff is to exit, to go, and that's a real problem in isolation, where you just can't go, you can't go out. You're only allowed to go out for exercise. You're not allowed to go out just because you've had a barney with the person you're living with. So it puts that extra pressure on people. So we know people don't like being that suggestion that they're wrong. Very, very important. Really watch out for it. And some of you will know there's a question that you need to avoid, worth mentioning once again, which is the why question. Don't ask the why question, particularly those kind of why questions which are not really why questions. They're not like, I'm really interested to know the answer to this. They're accusations like, why haven't you taken out the garbage? Why have you done this the same way again? And you're not really interested in the answer. You just want to say, I just want you to know you're wrong, and as soon as you do that, will trigger a response. We get some interesting comments from people saying they know what some of this is like. We're all in an interesting position at the moment where just by being around people, it feels like they trigger us. And I say feels like, I'm just going to have a drink. This is vodka, by the way. Feels like it triggers. That's not completely correct. It feels that way, but actually they do something, and then there's a little pause, quite often a very short pause, and then we respond. And it feels like they've made us do that, but they haven't. They've just kind of offered us, I think we talked about this before, an invitation to behave in that way. And if we can see it like an invitation to a party that we could accept or decline, that might be a more useful way for us to deal with it. I've been talking a lot. I've been doing so many seminars. Some of you will know there's the online seminar that I've been recording in a little tiny attic. And then we've also done, so that's a life skills seminar. And then I've been recording one for the NHS, which is completely free. So that's for NHS workers, key workers, frontline workers, and friends and family. It's pretty much anybody can watch it, although it is a bit targeted to working with patients and clients. Excuse me, I need more vodka, I think. So I've been busy doing that, talking about lots of this stuff, so if I get confused as to who I've talked to about it, that'll be why. And I've also been teaching still at London Met Uni, so there's lots of things I've been teaching on exactly the same screen, not always with the waterfall behind. So one of the things I want to talk about is about first position, second position and third position. Really, really important concepts. If you've heard it before, it's worth reminding yourself. If you haven't heard it before, could be really useful. I have some questions coming in now about how to deal with negativity from a distance. Actually, first, second and third position will really help you. So what's first position? First position is how we normally experience things from our own point of view, looking out at the world, seeing it as we see it. And in order to stay in an argument or a conflict, we need to stay in that first position. And when we're in first position, we don't really spend much time thinking about anybody else's point of view, and that's how we keep conflicts going. Interestingly, the other person is doing exactly the same. They're in their own first position, looking at me, only being able to see it from their point of view, and that is not a very good place to come from if you want to start building different relationships. So that's first position. We talked about it last time, I'm pretty sure. I said that if you want to be a dictator, first position is a good position to be in, where you know, Trump is actually a really good example of somebody who's stuck in first position all the time. The only view he has on the world is his own view. He doesn't really countenance anybody else's position. Now, sometimes that can be really useful, and other times, well, you know. So, second position. Second position is taking the role of stepping into somebody else's shoes. And that's really, really important if you want to resolve conflict. So if you're in a relationship, it doesn't have to be an intimate relationship, just any kind of relationship with a human, and you're feeling annoyed about it, taking a moment to step into their shoes, to second position, to really see what the world's like from their point of view, can be so, so powerful, so important, and something people don't do if they're keeping an argument going. So stepping into second position allows you to just see things from other people's point of view. So one of the first things Mary asked, how do I deal with negativity from a distance from a friend, is to take a moment and to step into their shoes and just imagine what is the world like for them? What would make them be this way? Because when people do stuff, there's an interesting thing about humans, which is pretty much always we do the best we can. If you look at your life, there's bound to be times when you've messed up, you've done things that in hindsight you go, oh, can't believe I did that. It was really foolish. What a stupid thing. And we can beat ourselves up about it. And we're going to come to that in a bit, how to stop beating yourself up. But when we look at it, in those moments we made those decisions, we probably made the best decision we could based on the information we had to hand, the skill set, the understanding of the world, what we thought was going on. So we did that. But, yeah, okay, with hindsight, we may do something different. But at the time, we didn't have that. So, being able to be kind to ourselves could be really important, but thinking about this other person, number two, second position, the other person we're in conflict with, what's going on for them? How are they seeing the world that makes them be this way? So this person's being very negative. It's like just taking a moment to go, well, what's happened there? What are they seeing? What's going on in their life? What's going on in their past? Because quite often people live through their past. They're just recreating their past all the time. We can be thankful we're not them, but we can get a sense of, okay, well, I understand why they're doing it. I still don't like it, but I can understand why they're doing that. That can be a really useful starting point. And if you're interested, third position is when you take an observer position, where you look at both you and the person you're slightly in conflict with. And Mary's talking about some kind of negativity. That means there's something kind of not fitting in that relationship. You take a third position where you are nothing to do with them. So if you're a therapist or a coach, one of the things your job is to do is to sometimes be able to see what somebody's saying. Oh, this person's been really horrible to me, and then they're being really horrible to me. Is to have that mediation position where you can observe. Problem with third position is if you get stuck in it, you never really feel anything because you're just observational. So you may know people like that. Men are often, complained about for having no emotions, not feeling anything about anything. Not just men, but as a generalization that people can make. Being in third position is when you're just divorced and distanced from everything. Nothing seems to bother you. Can be really useful in certain situations, and other times it can be a nightmare. It depends what you're doing, really. Equally, being stuck in first position tends to make you a dictator or very certain of yourself, which could be good or bad depending on how you play it. And sometimes people spend too much time in position 2, which means they are constantly stepping into the shoes of other people and thinking about what they want, which sounds like a great thing, unless you forget, what do I want? So really, the important thing is to be in the right position for the job at hand. If you got stuck in conflict, or a relationship is a bit stuck with somebody, or you're feeling I don't get them, I don't know what's going on for them, then take a few moments, if it's okay to do that, step into their shoes and kind of go, well, what does it feel like? What would drive this behavior? There's a thing in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which says, what if we considered everybody's behavior had some positive intention, they were doing it for some good reason, which maybe we don't understand, and maybe it's not good for everyone, but it's good for them, if we could give that as a starting point, as a kind of starting point, that might be a really useful place to come from. And that leads us into a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about some of the research into gratitude. So a lot of this stuff comes from positive psychology. So positive psychology, if you don't know, it's not about being happy all the time. It's about researching into what makes for a good life or a fulfilled life. They discovered that years ago. Marty Seligman, who started it in the late 90s, I think it was. He was president of the American Psychological Association, and he looked around at all the research, and he recognised that pretty much all the research was into depression and anxiety, and none of it was into happiness. And depression, anxiety, and psychosis and stuff are kind of useful and interesting to know about, but they don't represent most people's experience. It's not really. Most people don't end up in psychiatric institutions on long-term medication. Some people do, but most people don't. So he thought, well, maybe we should look at what makes a good life. We shouldn't ignore the other stuff. We should look at what makes a good life. So they started to go, well, what are the things that seem to make a good life? And a lot of it landed towards quite a lot of Buddhist perspectives, interestingly enough, meditation, and various exercises around kindness, which are central to many spiritual practices, but certainly Buddhism was a place they went to a lot. So we're going to look at some of that stuff from positive psychology. So some of the things they looked at were gratitude, the importance of gratitude, and there's interesting research. Some of it's about how gratitude changes how you feel, how positive you are, how grateful you are, but also how it changes your chances of getting anxiety or depression, and then more recently how those kind of things change our physical health. What's going on physically, what's happening in our brain, what's happening in our hormonal system, and actually there's quite a lot of stuff going on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So gratitude, that's number one. Compassion, which means to bring kindness. And similar to that, the practice of loving kindness, which is a kind of a Buddhist practice, which has been adopted into a Western style, although keeping a lot of its original ideas. I'm going to talk you through some of those things, which might be really useful for you if you are dealing with tricky people, or people who are currently behaving in a way that's quite difficult to be around. And as I say, your normal thing of running away, getting out, is just not that much of an option. So, first of all, some of the research. Gratitude, so one of the things that people have studied a lot, is very simple to get people to do gratitude. It's a very simple set of exercises. Doing gratitude, does that have an effect? Yes, it does has an effect on all sorts of things in your life and your health. It tends to make you more able to be positive about stuff. They did an interesting study with gratitude where they know that there's a real health difference between people of different socio-economic groups. So if you have enough money and a good education and a good job, stable job, then your health is actually improved compared to people who don't have those things. It's one of the shocking inequalities in healthcare. and certainly there's some studies where, I think it was in Glasgow, where if you lived on one street, you would die 10 or 20 years before the person living in the other posh street. And that would be the only difference, was your income levels and your housing. So finding a way to change that has been something people have been looking at for a long time. And one of the things that they've looked at with gratitude is, does gratitude in any way help buffer the inequalities that naturally come? And it's not about having loads and loads of cash. There's some studies into that as well. That having loads of money doesn't make you any happier than having enough to get you through. But if you have a low income, low socioeconomic scores, then your health outcomes will be worse than people having fairly decent ones. So they asked the question, if you are grateful, does that make any difference? And what they found is it does. That actually people who are grateful spend a lot of time having gratitude. It evens up this imbalance, that it means that their socioeconomic status doesn't affect them nearly to the degree that it would do. There's some other studies, more recent studies, on does it affect the markers of an immune system that's on the rampage, an immune system that's not functioning very well. So interleukins and other immune system markers. And again, they find that it does. That with gratitude, it again softens that, balances that out, and has an effect. With loving kindness, there's some very interesting studies coming out at the moment. So loving kindness is, and we talk you through the actual exercises, but just give you some background. Loving kindness, which is about being nice, being kind, giving love and kindness to people and yourself, again is linked to changes in your genes. So there's a little bit at the end of your gene called the telomere of the gene, and the length of it is an indicator of your kind of overall wellness and your longevity or predictive aging. And if people do loving kindness meditation, even if it's quite short, so they haven't been doing it for ages, there will be a change. You can see the changes in the telomeres, these end caps of the genes. So there's some really strong evidence, again, that what we do doesn't just have an effect on how happy we are, it also makes a difference to our physiology. So what are the exercises we're going to do? Let's find out if we've got any other questions coming up. Oh, hi, all sorts of people from my past showing up. Hi, Renera and Carl, and people more recently from various courses I've been teaching at university. Nice to see you. Thank you guys for coming along. Hope it's been useful and interesting for you. So we're going to start with the gratitude exercise. These are just really simple ways, and we talked about other stuff of how to deal with other people, how to shrink them down in your mind, how to avoid certain conversations. So just relook at that stuff, or if you've got any specific questions, drop them down and I'll answer them now. But this is more about how do you get yourself into a kind of more balanced space and state, so that those things, when they come up, those invitations for you to go and be grumpy and cross and irritable, there's less of a compulsion to do it because you're in a better state already. It's almost like, well, I could go that way, or I could not. So the first thing, what I'd like you to do, and I do hope you've got a piece of paper, a pen, or a laptop or something, just write this down, is the gratitude exercise. And there are a number of ways of doing it. In fact, the word gratitude shows up in pretty much all world religions. I think it's a core thing, one of the pillars of Islam. It's the Eucharist in the Christian church. That means thanksgiving. There's obviously, giving thanks and thanksgiving in American, culture, and it shows up pretty much everywhere. And there's some interesting research suggesting. Well, let me just describe what gratitude is first. So gratitude means being thankful for something, and it really seems to be defined as having a sense that this is something that's come from external. So you're thankful for this thing appearing, this gift. Yeah. So it could be a sunny day, or it could be the Rolling Stones, or it could be that pint of vodka I've got next to me. It could be anything, right? But it seems to be this sense that it's being given by some external force, person, God, if that's your spiritual orientation. So some of the interesting studies, particularly interesting studies, are that Gratitude is most powerful when it's given by a stranger. We doesn't seem to affect us nearly as much if we get gratitude from, if we get something, or we're grateful for something from someone close to us. It's almost like we would expect them to give that to us. But if a stranger does it, a kind of random act of kindness, someone taking the time to do something nice to us, that seems to have a very powerful impact on us. So lots of theories about why gratitude may be so important, and even small doses, like just practicing for a week, is shown to have quite a long-term effect on your well-being. There's a really interesting theory by Barbara Fredrickson called the broaden and build theory, which is when we go into stress, we kind of shut down and we just see the world through a very kind of narrow filter. When we go into flourishing, which is kind of linked to all this, flourishing is this sense of having a good life opening up. When we get into this place of blinkeredness, everything just shuts down. When we go into flourishing and becoming more aware of fulfillment and good stuff in other people, then our brain appears to start to connect to different parts of itself. So we start to get more interested in other things. We start to explore, we start to adventure, we start to connect, we start to engage. And there's another theory, if I can remember the name of it, which is... it'll rhyme. It was find, remind, and bind. So find means finding new friends. Reminding means reminding all the great stuff that you have in your current friendships. And what was the other one? Bind, which is finding new friendships, building and increasing current friendships. So all these ideas that the more that we socially cohese, the more we find people, the more that's good for us. But interestingly, I think it's evolutionary in that the more we did that back in the day, the more we be part of a gang, and a gang is stronger and more protected and able to be resilient as a unit more than an individual person might be able to be. So lots of interesting stuff about why gratitude shows up so much in people's lives, and probably has done through the whole of history, connecting with people. I talked earlier, if you saw, I did a brief little thing about oxytocin, that oxytocin is the kind of love or hug hormone. Give everyone a hug if you can see anyone. Just reach out, even though it's a cat, I'm trying not to knock anything, and give them a virtual hug. Because oxytocin is this hormone of bonding, a hormone of connection, and it's really, really important. It's important in childbirth, it's important in relationships, romance, a connection, and it's generated by anything that gives us a sense of connection with other people. And so hanging out with people, being with people is really important. But also stuff like dancing together, singing together, walking together, anything done together increases the amount of oxytocin that you have. But it's also true that if you do it virtually, then you increase oxytocin. So just by us being here right now, I'm just going to turn that light down. My face has gone slightly green, and you're seeing, there we are, that's better. You're seeing the waterfall on my face. I'll tell you a cool trick actually, whilst we're here. I think this might work. And I'm going to do it with the green one. You can see I can disappear. Ooh, look at that. Because this is a green screen, if you didn't realise. I'm not really swimming around. So, gratitude. How do we increase our levels of gratitude? Well, really simple. What you need to do is you need to spend some time. And it could just be a few moments every day. Or it could just be, do it for a week. It doesn't really matter. But what you need to do is to spend some moments. I'm going to get you to do it now. And I'm also going to find out what's going in the room next door to me, because I can hear people chopping and chatting. It's that time of day, isn't it? I don't know what's happening in your house or in my waterfall, of course. So what I'd like you to do is think about three good things that have happened in the last 24 hours. That's the first thing. So I'm going to get you to do this exercise. I'm going to play some music while you do it. 3 good things that have happened in the last 24 hours. And what is it about this that makes you feel grateful? What's the cause of it? Where did it come from? What's the external factor? What's the agency of this? Where did it come from? And why does that make you feel grateful? So I'm going to do that. And whilst you do that, I'll be back in just a minute. And let's put this one on. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. Oh, I'm back again, I think. Hopefully you've done that. I've killed everyone in the kitchen, so everything's good now. So 3 good things. Maybe you can pop them down. What are the 3 good things? Have we got I'm always grateful my shower is hot, and then we attribute that. Where does that come from? Well, it's good I've got a shower. Aren't I fortunate that the water flows in the taps, that the heating works? So, what are the 3 good things? Write them down. Share them out, because actually talking about them reminds you about them. We take for granted, I mean, it's so true at the moment, isn't it, that we took for granted absolutely that we just walk out the door, go to the pub, go to a restaurant, meet with our friends. That was just normal, just didn't even show up as important. Now, oh yeah, now it feels like that's something that's really missing in our lives and we didn't even notice it. So the ability to focus up on what is important for us. We've got some good stuff coming up here. Lunch in a sunny garden. Yeah, so in London, for instance, a lot of people haven't got access to gardens. You know, that must be really tough when the sun comes out. So really recognizing that, and then thinking about why is that? You know, why is that? Where's that come from? What's the agency of that? You know, so it's the sunshine, the fact I've got a garden, aren't I fortunate? A husband who knows me so well, sunshine, food and learning. I didn't have a migraine today. Excellent. Grateful to God because it meant being able to homeschool my children without my husband needing to help out. Fabulous. Nice friends getting in touch, extra work coming in, all the NLP people and the difference they make in my life, larks singing on my walk. Excellent. Yeah. So focusing up on that stuff and recognizing the externalness to you and how lucky you are, how fortunate you are to have a sense of that. Just the simplest way of doing it. Some people recommend keeping a diary. Some people say it's good to do it towards the end of the day because you can see your day, and that it's also useful for helping sleep. So there's lots of good stuff. We've got beautiful cupcakes from my sister-in-law. Famous dad whiskey from my best mate. Dad making me an egg sandwich and eating it together. Lovely. Well, doing things together is really good. Gardening. Husband singing. Reminded me why I fell in love with him. And a surprise legacy from a very close friend in a will. I think I've talked about this before as well, about post-traumatic growth. You know, that when stuff happens, how do we respond to it? Do we respond to it as, oh no? Or do we kind of start to go, okay, well that's happened. What can I learn from it? How can I move forwards? Not having cooked tonight, cheese and moussaka. Vicky's been doing her 30-day sketchbook. I don't know if you've been following her on Facebook, doing her sketches. A puppy falling to sleep. Puppy named after me, I assume, Jane. Excellent. So, so being grateful for stuff is a very simple, very important thing to do. The next thing is similar, linked, which is compassion. And I'm going to talk about compassion particularly within the context of the loving kindness meditation. It's one of the easiest ways to do it. So compassion means to bring yourself to a situation with kindness, with thoughtfulness for somebody else and also for yourself. So I'm going to run you through the easiest and kind of most powerful way of doing a compassion and loving kindness meditation. And it has a number of steps, but they're pretty easy. First thing I'd like you to do, is I'm going to change the backdrop. Actually, I think this would be nice. Oh yeah, got a bit of music in the background. Hopefully that's coming through as well. If you can't hear me for any reason, do let me know. That looks fine. Okay. So, first thing I'd like you to do is just get in touch with what it feels like to be in a place of kindness. So for you, when for you are you kind? Who are you kind with? Who do you find it easy to be kind with? Now, it could be your kids, could be your best friends, could be your puppy, your rescue dog, could be around nature. But just start to connect with what it feels like to be kind. What that feels like. Where does that feel in your body? What are your thoughts like? How does your mind think? What's your breathing like? And as you do, just connect with that feeling. Feel it flowing through your body, and then take a few moments to follow this very simple but very important set of steps. The first thing you need to do is to pour that kindness towards yourself. Because unless you can bring compassion to yourself and kindness to yourself, then taking it to other people doesn't really make a whole heap of sense. So practice maybe having it coming in waves, just watching it like the waves on that beach. Just feeling those feelings of being kind to yourself. And remember what I said earlier about all the decisions we make, all the things we do them for the best possible reasons based on the information we have. So if you're holding a grudge against yourself having done something, maybe you can let that go, recognizing that you were doing your best. And then to think about some of those aspects of yourself that you're not as kind to as maybe you need to be, and pouring some of that kindness into that. And then taking a few moments when you really have a sense of being kind to yourself and aspects of you that maybe you've been resenting, developing a sense of forgiveness, kindness. Then move on to the next phase, which is to imagine somebody that you do already feel very kindly towards. Just picture them in your mind and imagine giving them kindness, maybe saying some of the phrases like, "May you have happiness in your life. May you be at peace. May life be good for you." So you're spending some time just thinking about somebody else. Remember, of course, we talked about earlier that spending some time thinking about somebody else, it's good for them, it's good for us too. So give and beam that kindness to those people that you care about. Maybe see them in front of you. Just take a few moments to give that kindness to them. And then I'd like you to think about the third person. Third type of person is somebody you don't particularly have any relationship to one way or the other. They're just somebody that maybe bump into every now and then. But, maybe it's the person who used to drive the bus or give you coffee when coffee shops existed, or you saw pass in the street. Somebody you don't have any particular relationship, and again, just beam that kindness to them as well. And then when you've done that, wishing them peace and happiness and a good life. Just feel what it feels like to spend the moments and time giving that to yourself, to people you care about, and to this person that you don't have any particular relationship to. It's just developing that ability to generate and be present to kindness. And then, probably the most important, and for many people the most transformational thing, is to think about somebody who you don't have a fabulous relationship with. Somebody who you feel slighted by, or maybe you've just got stuck in some kind of not very powerful, strange and not good place with. And to imagine giving that kindness to them, independent of whether you believe they deserve it or not, independent of whether what they did was good or bad, righteous, wrong, whatever your judgments are, let them go and just decide to give them kindness. Because the Buddha was renowned for saying that when we hold resentment against someone else, he says, holding on to anger is like holding a burning coal. It burns you. And he also said, being really furious and frustrated with someone, being resentful, is like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. Because if that person is not even in your life or not in your same room as you, you're being annoyed with them, they don't really know about it. It's really you that suffers. And it prevents the relationship from ever having a chance of moving forwards and keeps you stuck in a past event. So maybe it's time. Maybe it's time. Just like the waves on the sea, come in and come out. Just like some of the animals people have talked about they're grateful for. They seem to just be able to let things go and move on. Maybe we could learn to do that too. Maybe. And then finally, to take a few moments to wish them peace, happiness, and a good life. Before moving on to the final stage, which is to wish kindness, compassion to all living things and beings, whether it's the trees, the birds, fish in the sea. To just take a few moments. And then to slowly bring yourself back in your own time. Thanking yourself for taking the time to give that to yourself, because remember, the evidence is people who do the loving kindness exercises, the gratitude and compassion exercises, they get changes in their well-being and their health to some extent. So you're getting a gift, a benefit from it, and by giving it to other people, even if they're not physically there, by letting go of that, that will change how you are when you're there next time. One of the recommendations is to link this to something you do anyway. So if you have a meal every day with your family or your close relations, then to start the meal or to end the meal just by saying, so what's been great today? What are you happy about? It doesn't have to be diarized, doesn't have to be journaled. It's about bringing an awareness of what you're pleased about, and maybe pointing out some of the things that happened to you that were aspects of kindness that you saw. And at this time, remember I said earlier that some evidence that doing this to strangers is really valuable. We don't get in touch with strangers much. Also, it seems, but virtually in our virtual worlds, we can be bumping into all sorts of people who are, friends of friends of friends of friends we don't know directly. Just say something nice, even just dropping a little heart on their post. You know what it's like when someone likes your post. It's a nice thing. We know that actually tends to produce a little dose of dopamine in our bodies. But we could maybe give that just kindly. So, what I'd like you to take away from today is, as we move into week 5 or week 6, depending on where you are, of lockdown, that you've survived so far, done all right, and that's something to be grateful for. You may know people who've had the virus. Hopefully they've moved through it. Most people do. You may know people who haven't managed to do that, but you could be thankful for the fact that you knew them and for the great moments that they shared with you on their journey. And finally, I'd like you to just imagine your future. And as you think about your future, just imagine it as a line. Just notice which direction it goes in. Some of you will be more familiar with this than others, but just imagine which direction it goes in. And what I'd like you to do as you look along that line is to see, let's say 5 years from now, where this is all done and dusted. We can barely remember that summer. We look back, and in the same way, how much do you remember about 2015? It's a long time ago. So, take yourself into 2025. Turn around in your mind and look back. Look back at that distant time that seemed so important at the time, as these things do. And feel what it feels like to connect with being in 2025. Well, this is just a distant moment. And then float all the way back to now, to 2020, and pour into your future a brightness, a lightness, maybe one of the colours if you can see the video, maybe one of the colours that particularly calls to you, and add some little Disney sparkle, so it sparkles and glitters. Add some aromas that for you would make this future just feel, smell and sense beautiful, brilliant, exhilarating, wonderful, welcoming. So the smell may be the aroma of wood smoke. It may be the smell of your favourite restaurant. It may be the smell of a particular perfume from the flowers or somebody wears. It may be the smell of freshly ground coffee, whatever it is for you. And then just feel what it feels like in your mind to step into that future, way beyond today, way beyond the next few weeks, way beyond the next few months. Just feeling what it feels like, feeling really grateful for whatever it is you've learnt in this experience as you move forwards now with a new sense of what it's like to be you. A you that knows how to be different, that's learned something important, because, you're always learning. There's always something that may not be clear to you right now, but there is always something that when we reflect back, we recognize, you know what? That was more useful than I thought it was at the time. We've all had moments like that. And so I'm going to leave you with that thought and let the beach play a little bit longer. And also just to remind you, not only to be kind to yourself and others, but as part of this, one of the things I've been doing is building lots of programs for people who are helping us. So people in the NHS and key workers, essential services, they're doing amazing work, and it's really important they are. And we know, particularly with the NHS workers, they're putting themselves, unfortunately, a degree of risk, or having to isolate themselves from their families to keep their families safe. So as a thank you, as a gratitude exercise, I've developed some of the things that I talk about, and normally we charge for these courses, and we've created a whole series of very short, very easy to access podcasts, Facebook groups, videos on YouTube, so I can pretty much get them anywhere. About less than about 10 minutes each, so it's enough to fit into a very busy schedule, help them to be de-stressed, to deal with relationships, because they'll be faced with all sorts of people in trouble, in challenging situations, and to learn how to sleep more easily, and all sorts of stuff that would be really useful, and also some skills they can teach to their patients, to help their patients to manage themselves in a more healthy way too. So all that's free. There's a little sign coming up in a second to tell you a bit more about that. But what they need to do is go to philparker.org/2020 NHS. And what I'd love you to do is to share that to everybody, really, because it's free. We launched it yesterday. We already had some people interested, but there's thousands of workers out there who have no idea it exists. And if you can do anything to share it with as many people as you know, they may not work for the NHS, but they will know people who do, then please do, because we want to give them something back. We know they're under pressure at the moment, and anything we can do to help, we think would be a great thing. So please join in on that, and I will see you guys soon. There is. I will see you guys soon on the next one of these. You take care now.